Girl, the one I found on the side of the 34th track. She became my wife. You have to agree, not everyone is so lucky to pick up a girl lying in a ditch. No one needs, but very appetizing. I'm lucky. We with Delia Gardner, now Collins, after the wedding lived in a rental house on Sever Euclid Avenue, right next to her parents' cottage. A cute little house with a white veranda and a two-car garage deep in the plot. Perfectly affordable. Compared to prices in Chicago, for rent of such housing, one would have to pay significantly more. This is Princeton, a small town, whatever you want. When I rented a room from the Collins, Delia and I regularly conducted her self-confidence correction. Occasionally, the girl would sneak out of her bedroom into my bunk, and we quietly enjoyed each other's company. At first, we were cautious. Yes, we satisfied each other, so to speak, as wholesomely as possible. Then I showed her some techniques of tongue work. My linguistic skills amazed Delia. Our meetings became regular. More accurately, nightly. After a few months of such exercises, my girl was thrilled not to stop at what had been achieved. She decided not to limit herself to preliminaries, but to go through the full set of procedures. From start to finish, Delia and I discussed this important step, and we came to the conclusion that motherhood was somewhat premature for her. I stocked up on silicone. Despite all our efforts to keep it under wraps, I think Delia's parents guessed what was happening. And it was hard to remain oblivious when their daughter moaned with passion in the guest room at night. But both Dustin and Martha seemed to have decided that their daughter was entering adulthood. They were not very skillful at pretending that nothing objectionable was going on. As my mother-in-law later told me when we discussed this matter, "You know, Timothy, compared to my Delia before she met you, the new daughter looks like a beacon. She's always shining with happiness." And her father and I decided that even if it's temporary, let her enjoy it. I just got tired of her previous whining and tears. And you inspired confidence in us. For some reason, Dustin and I were sure you wouldn't hurt her. Once, approximately 3 months after my arrival, Delia was visiting me. The bed creaked horribly under our athleticism. We realized that right away. Therefore, all our exercises with my plump girl were performed on the floor. We simply pushed the mattress off the bed and frolicked freely, without being distracted by any external plaintive sounds from the bed. That time, Miss Collins climbed on top of me. She decided to show me her horsemanship. It was a mistake. Delia simply couldn't stuff a corner of the pillow or a piece of blanket into her mouth. She screamed so loud that it echoed throughout the house. Within seconds, the door burst open, and my Amazon startled parents barged into the room. At first, Martha and Dustin didn't quite grasp what was happening. They stood there, trying to figure out what to do. AI, peering out from under the girl who had fallen on top of me wet with sweat, said, "Good evening." Somehow, nothing much came to mind. Delia turned around, covered her chest with her hands, and screamed, "Mom, Dad, what are you doing here? Daughter." Martha began, "You were screaming so loudly that we didn't know what was happening and rushed in. We were worried about you." Delia calmed down slightly and requested, "Mom, Dad, I am of course grateful to you for caring and all that, but please leave. We're in such a situation. It's very uncomfortable for me." Mother-in-law and father-in-law hesitated, and I decided that it was time to put an end to this guerrilla warfare. And the next day, straight after breakfast, over a cup of coffee, I asked the owners of the house to return the keys of their daughter. So what? Maybe I didn't burn with youthful passion for my Delia, but she suited me in every way. I've already been burned by love, that's enough. And Delia behaves like a girl in love. Yes, she loves me, that's absolutely obvious. And I feel good with her. It's cozy, like at home. Delia Collins, of course, is naive to the point of being ridiculous, but in my opinion, this is not her critical trait. Only her mother came for our engagement. Her father had a serious operation planned and couldn't make it. I didn't hold it against him. He's too important at the clinic. Many people's lives depend on him. But her mother took a week off and came to visit me. As the night approached, after a good dinner, after all the talks about the wedding and our future family life, we went to bed. Delia's relatives sorted out all the guest rooms, and Mom decided to sleep in my sleeping bag. I threw an air mattress on the floor for myself, and Mom Beth made herself comfortable on my bed. We whispered in the dark for a long time. She's a very naive girl, said Mom. No, I'm not saying she's stupid. She just has little understanding of life. It's amazing to me how the Collinses managed to raise her like this. She sees the world through rose-colored glasses. They call such girls simpletons. Mom, Delia felt ugly her whole life, being overweight. That's why she was closed off. That's how she turned out to be such a naive creature. She just turned 20 a month ago, and she was a virgin. Can you imagine? We fell silent. Then I added, what do you expect from an underage child? And the fact that she's not very smart, well, I don't need her to solve integrals with me. We have other concerns, especially at night. Mom chuckled, and I joked. I've already tasted sorrow with one clever one. Yes, son, you're probably right. Try to be happy and make this girl happy. I like her. I wish I had a daughter like her. I'm older than my wife Delia by 10 years, and because of this, I'm slightly complexed. Something inside me quietly gnaws at my consciousness. I attribute this to uncertainty in my own masculinity following the divorce from Rosa. But that's beside the point. And again, a hot Illinois summer. This year, the temperature in June held at 85 degrees. Not as bad as 2 years ago, when all the crops burned out in part of the Illinois forests, but still uncomfortably hot. When Delia brought up her devastating question on Saturday morning, I was slightly taken aback. At first, I thought it was a joke, but it turned out not to be. She was dead serious. Well, dear, she said to me, rummaging through the bedroom in her knitted panties in search of a suitable bra. How many women have you been with before me? Good Lord. Del, do I count them? So you've had so many that you can't count them. I really didn't like that approach. Well, okay, I'll count now. Should I include Rosa, my ex-wife? Delia thought for a moment, then nodded. Yes, Tim, count her too. Students from different university courses have their own approaches to life. Medical students are interesting in their attitude towards intimacy. Not all, of course, but a significant majority. For them, the need for sex is on par with the need for food, drink, and sleep. That is, if the need arises, it must be satisfied. During my studies at the University of Illinois, I had intimate relationships with 5 girls. Nobody considered this unusual or improper. We were good friends, helped each other with our studies, and had a great time. But that was until I met Rosa. Love, that's serious. It imposes certain obligations, and Rosa Turner and I cut off all other ties. When Rosa and I finished our university studies and were about to move into residency, we got married. My parents were well off. They earned very well. My dad told me when I informed him of the decision to get married, Tim, don't worry about what other people think. You are our only son, and we had you so that you could be successful and happy. My father looked at me attentively to see if I understood what he was saying. I nodded in agreement. We are paying for your education, my father continued. We support you financially. We don't expect you to break your back working to earn for higher education and for your life. You don't need to take on the yoke of loans, only to spend your whole life paying off the interest. Dedicate your time fully to your studies. That's the only way you'll become a competitive specialist. Dad, I responded, but now I'll have my wife, my woman, and I'm obligated to provide for her. Right now, your obligation is to study. First and foremost, to accumulate a wealth of knowledge and experience. Understand? Until now, we've fully covered your needs. Your mother and I have enough resources to support another child. We, Beth and I, were counting on having at least 3 children. But it turned out as it did. You're our only one. We'll accept Rosa as our own child. Relax. These were my ancestors, and I tried not to let down their hopes and justify their guardianship. And literally a year later, I discovered that my relationship with Rosa was somewhat non-exclusive. Apparently, she couldn't shake off the student habit of not limiting herself in sexual partners. How I found out is of secondary importance. But the evidence was damning. We got divorced. I mourned for a long time. If it weren't for my mom and dad, I would have flunked my residency. They constantly pushed me towards getting my diploma. Unfortunately, I didn't earn any honors, but my theory and practice were still at a good level. One day I asked my mom if she had ever cheated on my dad. She looked up from her book, calmly looked at me over her glasses and asked, "Do you love your father?" "Yes. Of course I love him. He's a great man. Could you, for example, She paused for a moment. Slander him, or stab him in the back with a knife, or push him off a cliff into an abyss. Good Lord, I exclaimed. Mom, how can you suggest such a thing? But you just suggested that I could do something like that. I'm sorry, Mom. I understand you. I'm sorry. Mom Beth just smiled and continued reading her the Journal of Biological Chemistry. To be honest, I once tried to read the literature that fascinates my mom so much. I'm a medic, and I was curious about what my mother does in the clinic. And to be honest again, I didn't understand anything from the very first pages. I, a person with a higher medical education, looked at these discussions and formulas like a sheep at a new gate. That's my unique mom for you. 6, I told my wife. She was startled. What 6? 6. People. You were in close relationships with 6 women before me. Yes, Deli. Yes. I'm very sorry I didn't meet you earlier. I see. So, here's the thing. I was thinking, maybe I don't have enough experience. Maybe I missed out on something in life. Maybe I should also try diversity. After all, I was a virgin when and then we immediately got married and all. How do I say this? I feel deprived. There. I was at a loss for words. And Deli was looking at me intently, waiting for my reaction. I had not expected this situation at all. Everything in our family seemed to be fine. More than fine. Everything was excellent. Our love, our relationship, our intimacy. We thought that as soon as Delia finished her studies at the Chicago Institute of Technology, we would immediately start having children. But here, I insisted that my wife receive a higher education. Anything can happen in life. If something were to happen to me, Deli needs to be an independent citizen. True, I didn't let her go to Chicago. She studied remotely. It was somewhat more expensive than in-person education. But I talked to my father-in-law and mother-in-law. They paid for more than half of the 4 years of tuition. After graduation, Delia was supposed to become, and did become, an engineering technologist at a sewing industry enterprise. Her ancestors owned 3 tailoring workshops and supplied Princeton, Malden, Casper, and why not? Therefore, I thought this particular diploma would be useful for her. Delia enjoyed her studies. Moreover, she started running with me. Yes, indeed. I had a good 2-mile route. I would run it every morning in no rush in 15 minutes to keep my cardiovascular system and musculoskeletal system in tone. After 3 months of living together, Deli asked to join me for a run. Naturally, I agreed. The first 2 miles we ran took us half an hour. Returning home, Deli collapsed onto the sofa and rasped, "Never again. Never, never, never." The next morning, she came out with me in leggings, a tank top, and new sneakers. But you said, "Never mind what I said." She interrupted me. "Come on, don't just stand there." A couple of months later, we were running my route in 20 minutes, and unsurprisingly, Deli developed a waist. It gave her figure the shape of an acoustic guitar. She became even more irresistible to me. In bed, we became completely uninhibited. By that time, we had lived as husband and wife for over a year, yet our passion did not diminish. Every week we discovered something new and then tested this novelty for 5 to 6 days. Some innovations we particularly liked, and we enjoyed them sometimes for a month. Daily physical closeness only fueled our passion. So these were our customs. Such was our life system. But that Saturday, the system malfunctioned. Something had to be done. Finally, I cleared my throat and asked, "Do you really want to try sleeping with another man? I think it would be good for me. That's how it is." For some reason, she didn't think about my benefit. Oh my God, she's just a child. Sometimes flighty, sometimes capricious, sometimes impertinent. I didn't know what to do. Deny her the freedom to act? She would be offended, feel humiliated, and besides, or give permission for adultery? And then what? Although I knew exactly what would happen next. Next would only be divorce. But damn it, my marriage was on the brink of an abyss, and now it all depended only on her, on my wife. Tell me, Delia, did you make this decision yourself, or did someone suggest it to you? Delia blushed. I've been corresponding with my former classmate, Linda Williams. Wait, I interrupted my wife. Is this Linda Roberts Williams? Yes, that's her. You know her? Yes. I treated her for trichomoniasis 6 months ago. This didn't seem to impress Delia. Apparently she hadn't heard of such a disease. I didn't tell her that I had looked through the medical history of this girl. At 20, she had already been treated for trichomoniasis twice and once for gonorrhea. Well, that was a bad advisor. And what did this Linda Williams tell you? Well, she said that it's foolish and unfashionable to only know one man in one's life. I made up my mind. Okay, Delia Gardner, I said with a heavy heart. You are not my property, and I cannot dictate your actions. You will decide everything yourself, but you will also be responsible for the consequences. Delia blinked in confusion, thought for a moment, and decided, okay, Tim, I'm a big girl, and I'll decide everything myself. Thank you. I just don't want you to get hurt, so I need some time to prepare you for this. I wanted to say warring, but somehow I couldn't bring myself to say it. That's how our relationship wandered into some kind of muck. This Saturday, I went shopping in Princeton. At our pharmacy by the clinic, I bought special, extra strong condoms, and at the gun shop on West Long Street, I picked up a pepper spray. Plus, I made a few other stops for odds and ends. By lunchtime, I had everything ready. So, dear, you're about to make a foolish and dangerous move. But if you think it's necessary, I won't try to stop you. After all, it's demeaning to beg one's wife not to cheat. Delia looked at me in surprise but didn't say anything. I continued, look here, these are the most reliable condoms that you can find in Princeton. You must use them. I don't want you to die of AIDS. Understand? Yes, Tim, I understand. Thank you for caring so much about me. Delia seemed somewhat bewildered. Apparently, she was expecting something else. Now this is pepper spray. There's no telling what kind of nutcase you might run into. He could be a maniac. This spray will give you a minimum level of protection. Understand? Yes, Timothy. I get it. We spent about 15 minutes practicing how to quickly draw the spray from her bag and rehearsing how to use it. We went out to the back porch, and I made my wife discharge a few bursts of pepper spray. Well, dear, you're almost ready. I've done everything I could and secured you as much as possible. Now it's all up to you. She went out hunting on Sunday, on a surprisingly gloomy, much like my mood, July Sunday, at 7 in the evening. Damn it all. I instructed her again about potential dangers and saw her off through the threshold. Delia said she might only return in the morning. She got into her Volkswagen up and drove off, and I flopped down into the chair and froze in a stupor. I sat there until 9 o'clock when the door creaked and someone entered the hallway. I stood up to see the visitor. It was my wife Delia, grim as a storm cloud. I just sighed and returned to my chair, and Deli came in and settled on the couch opposite me. We sat in silence. Finally, she couldn't take it anymore. Aren't you curious about how it went? Del, why would I want to poke at a wound, think about it, and you ask me, how did it go? So how did it go? In short, my whole plan was complete crap. Complete and utter freaking crap, she nodded bitterly. Apparently I'm a complete idiot. Wow, that got me interested and worried. Del, are you hurt? Is everything okay? Ah, Tim, I'm fine. Well, not entirely. Tell me, I commanded and straightened up in the chair. In general, I went to the Black Rose Salon. You know, on East Peru Street. Don't know it? Well, okay, it's a bar. It's open until 2 in the morning on Saturdays. They serve alcohol. There's billiards, something else. I get it. If possible, get to the point. Ah, my wife fidgeted. To the point. I was sitting at the bar for about 20 minutes until James Wagner decided to approach me. You don't know him. Well, why don't know? I treated him for lupus about 6 months ago. So, okay, forget the lupus. Listen further. He sat down next to me and offered to buy me a drink. I didn't refuse. And one word led to another. Our conversation turned to topics of intimacy and sex. I sadly smiled. Del, intimacy and sex, they're kind of the same thing. Whatever, you just need to listen. She paused, assessed my readiness as a listener, and continued. I was openly flirting with him, and the guy seemed okay. Just a bit dumb. I nodded silently, agreeing with her assessment. So he invited me for a ride in his BMW. It was clear we weren't going to just drive around in his car. But I'm an adult. I made a decision. Understand? I had firmly decided to sleep with another guy. I appreciate your persistence and determination, I sadly acknowledged. Delia nodded in agreement again. We turned right onto 7th Street. It's a dead end there, and moved to the back seat, and he immediately grabbed me and latched onto me like a leech, just sucking and sucking on my lips, and panting, grabbing me everywhere, all parts of the body, and kneading like kneading dough, and he reeked of beer. She shuddered. I decided to stop it all. It's dirty and nasty. I told him that I didn't want anything. I'm sorry, I said, but I have to go. And he grabbed my hand and wouldn't let go. I asked him nicely. Jimmy, I told him, let me go. I need to go home. My husband is waiting for me. And he started yelling at me about how I'd been blowing him off. And he hit me on the cheek. Ah, the bastard. I jumped up. Let me see your cheek. No, Tim, he didn't hit me hard. It's just really hurtful. Well, I took out the pepper spray from my purse, held my breath, and sprayed it in his face. And, while he was rubbing his eyes, I went back to my German and drove home. That was my date. After those words, I felt sick. Even though nothing happened, my life had still changed dramatically. The next day, Sunday morning, we continued our conversation. As I gloomily heated yesterday's pecan pies in the microwave and prepared instant coffee, Delia sat at the table, her head resting on her hand, thinking. Finally, she asked, Tim, I feel uneasy. I think I made a mistake. Tell me, Tim, did I ruin everything badly? You messed up quite a bit, dear. Can I somehow fix it? I don't know. There might be some ways to fix it, but I don't know them. I'll talk to my mom. All right, talk to her. Dell didn't have breakfast. She went to seek advice. She returned quiet and dejected. I inquired, so what did your mom advise? Delia silently sat at the table and stared blankly at the countertop. Dell, I became worried. What happened? They were yelling. I sat opposite her and looked at my wife in surprise. The Collinses yelling? They're the quietest people I know. They were yelling at me all this time. Both of them. They started by telling me what an idiot I am. Wait, Dell, you told them the whole backstory? You went to ask for advice. Well, yes. I asked my mom what I should do. I had to explain the situation somehow. Lord, holy simplicity, how can one be angry with her? I sat there feeling pity for this senseless child, and my wife morosely continued. Then they yelled that they didn't raise me this way, that all their efforts were in vain, and that I was an ungrateful daughter. Then they explained what awaited me if I had gone through with it and cheated on you. They explained for a long time. So, what did they actually advise you? I interjected. Advise? Oh, right. They advised me to crawl to you on my knees and beg for forgiveness. Is that all? They yelled at me for 10 minutes. I'm in shock. And then Delia started crying. They don't love me. Stop. Dell, listen to me. Wipe your tears. I handed her a napkin. People yell for two reasons, either because they're hurt or because they're scared. 10 minutes of yelling. It means your parents were both hurt and scared. Why do you think that is? Dell stopped sobbing and stared at me with the expression I adore, eyes wide open and mouth agape. An epiphany. They were scared for me? They were afraid for me? Well, of course, Dell. You're their daughter, their only child. Naturally, they're worried about you. Your risky behavior hurt them. She abruptly stood up. I'll be right back, and she ran off. She returned only an hour later, still gloomy and pensive. I reheated the breakfast again. Sitting at the table, my wife looked up at me. You know, Tim, I realized something. I silently placed the plate with pies in front of my wife and went for the coffee. Dear, aren't you curious? I sat at the table, pushing the coffee toward my wife. All right, go ahead. No, Delia protested, if you're not interested. Dell, stop it, I snapped. Stop acting like a child. You're 20, and you're throwing tantrums one after another. Just tell me. I had never raised my voice at my wife before. She shrank back at my outburst and looked at me fearfully. I backed down. Okay, sorry. I'm just on edge. It's been a while since I had such a crappy day. Go ahead. I'm listening. Tears welled up in my wife's eyes. She sniffled and decided to speak. You see, dear, I'm not upset that you yelled at me. I realized something. I waited. When I met you, my life changed. And I changed myself. I really did. I started to notice that I was getting attention. Men started to pay attention to me. You know, they look at me in a certain way. That never happened before. I smiled. Indeed, after getting married, Delia had gained confidence and even some self-assurance. Not just her figure and self-esteem change, her face, her walk, and even her gaze change. To put it simply, she had magically become more beautiful. I noticed that too. And then, and you. I feel like you treat me in a special way. Understand? Like a treasure. Well, do you understand? I think a man should treat his woman that way, and me. I thought everything was so magical because I was something special. But now I understand. It's not like that. It's not because I'm exceptional. It's because you are so exceptional. That's it. What could I say to that? I hugged her and kissed the top of her head. In the evening, I got ready to leave for a few minutes. When Delia asked where I was going, I honestly replied that I needed to see James Wagner. Tim. What? Are you going to beat him up? Don't, Tim. Please, you'll get into trouble. She sobbed. Sorry, honey, but I can't let his action go unpunished. I promised to avoid trouble. At least, I'll minimize it. Tim, I'll go with you. Or better, Tim, better not go anywhere at all. Calm down, Del. Everything will be fine. And I firmly said, stay home and wait for me. Understand? No foolishness. Got it? No more foolishness. Stay home. Don't go anywhere. And I left. I met James at the Black Rose. I joined him at the bar and ordered myself a mug of beer. So, Doc, how did it go? I think I did everything right. I nodded. Yes, James, you did everything right, but you still owe me. That Collins. She sprayed some nastiness right in my eyes. Nobody told me about that. She's not Collins anymore. She's Gardner. Doc, does that suddenly make me feel better? James, I understand perfectly. Will an extra $2,000 on top make you happy? Will that heal your offended soul? Oh yes, Doc, that's a good amount. That's the right amount. Thank you. I counted out $200 bills and pushed the stack towards Wagner. He nodded in thanks and tucked the money away. Well then, I left my unfinished beer. I need to go home. Thanks, James. You have discounts on any treatment from me. Good, Doc. It's nice doing business with you. Let me know if you need anything. And I went home to my naive wife. Thank you for being with us and listening until the end. If you found it interesting, please subscribe, give us a like, and share this video with your friends. And we'll see you